The ITEP's data showed that Mississippians who make less than $19,300 a year, the poorest of the poor, already spend about 12.4% of their income on taxes. In comparison, Mississippians who make over $362,000 annually only contribute 6.9% of their income taxes. When we say it is more expensive to be poor, we mean it. It is more expensive. We're carrying the rich instead of the rich carrying us. That's the problem. When you get your paycheck, either at the end of the week, or if you get it at the end of the 2 weeks, or if you get it on the 1st and 15th, or the 15th, 30th, whatever have you. You look at your paycheck and you look to see the amount because you really want to see not just how much money you've made over that time, but how much in taxes that the government takes out. And when you live in a society and you're grouped up with a bunch of other people, it is agreed upon in society that you pool some of your resources together to provide different goods and services so that society can run. Things like roads and bridges and schools and fire departments and other different apparatuses that are made so that we can actually have a functioning society. There are things that do regulatory practices so that we don't die from the products that we buy and use, right? But these things require funds, and these funds are taken out in the form of taxes. Well, the governor of Mississippi said, let's try to get rid of that. Which some people who are GOP were like, hey, that sounds good to me. But is it going to be good for the workers? Let's get into this because I want to get into this as well. So let's get into this. This is out of Mississippi Today. It says Governor Reeves signs typo tax overhaul bill into law to phase out income tax, trim grocery tax, and raise gasoline tax. The tax experts and local officials remain divided on whether the tax overhaul will actually benefit the state's economy or hurt poor people and locales. This whole brand new thing is happening. So one of the things that I would like to show to you guys first is there was this tweet that was put out by Governor Reeves. Make sure I have it prepared. This tweet by Governor Reeves actually is kind of a lengthy one. He posted on Twitter and signed it into law. So let me share this. And then Roger had some things to say, and I want to get into that too. But I want to read what he says first from his narrative, and then we shall go into the rest of the article because the article gets into the nuts and bolts and the gory details. All right, so let's go. So this is from Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi. He said, "We did it, Mississippi. We just eliminated the income tax. Today is a day that will be remembered, not just for the headlines, not just for the politics, but for the profound generational change it represents. Today, I was proud to sign into law a complete elimination of the individual income tax in the state of Mississippi." Let me say that again. Mississippi will no longer tax the work, the earnings, or the ambition of its people. I want you guys to pay really close attention. He said the complete elimination of the state income tax. We're going to find out why that's not true. Okay, let's continue on. It says this is more than a policy victory. This is a transformation. And it's a transformation that I have believed in, fought for, and worked toward for many years. From my days as a lieutenant governor to my first campaign for this office and every legislative session since, I have made this my mission. Because I believe in the simple idea that government should take less so that you can keep more. This is a flawed logic here. It says that our people should be rewarded for hard work, not punished, and that Mississippi has the potential to be a magnet for opportunity for investment, for talent, and for families looking to build a better life. Here's the problem with this statement right here, because I believe in a simple idea that government should take less so that you can keep more. Let me put this out there, right? You get what you pay for, right? You pay for education, and depending on how much you pay, the quality of education, you get what you put out. Now, it doesn't mean that throwing more money at the issue is to solve the problem. You can also make sure it works more efficiently, but that would mean that you can't have it centered around profits. Same thing with things like roads, bridges, water treatment plants. It could be different types of infrastructure that you need within the state. It could be for services that, help people, working families, what have you. But part of being in society means that you pay in so that everybody has a social safety net, not just social safety nets, but infrastructure to keep themselves safe, to keep others safe, to make things so that people are able to conduct their lives on a convenient and possible basis. How can you get to work without roads? How can you get to work without a car that has the safety regulations in place so that you can drive it safely? Or, the state apparatus that makes sure that the gasoline is at the right cleanliness level so that it doesn't damage your engine. Or the state apparatus that actually makes sure that the gas station that you go to, everything is working properly so that the gas station doesn't blow up. And people say, well, if they, a lot of times they will put out this notion that, well, people will vote with their dollars and they'll go, to the places that actually operate the best. And the thing is, it's like, no, because if you are pulling back regulation, and if the government is owned by the corporations, that is not going to translate to better regulation, because they're overseeing themselves, because they're policing themselves based on your dollar amount. Because the thing is like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We're trying to prevent people from dying or being cheated because we don't want it to happen in the first place. And yet you're trying to make it so that, oh, well, they have their power in their hands completely and they can call the balls and strikes by themselves without having an umpire. And then they will cheat because they rather say sorry than ask for permission. And the permission that they may be asking for is something unreasonable, like, undercutting safety measures so they can save a few extra dollars. And they will do that. I do not want to be sitting on top of a gas station and that's not being regulated properly because the gas company skirted responsibility, and there's no umpire to call and say, hey, you can't do that. And it enforces that law. Anyway, this is one of the reasons why we pay taxes. And so the whole thing about saying that government should take less so that you can keep more is that if you're pulling your resources together and government is actually giving you what you're supposed to have, which is what the people want us to have, what the people collectively want to have, then that's one thing, right? Let's say, for instance, single payer healthcare, housing for all, education for all, things like that. If our taxes do go up, it's probably not going to go up by that much because government is not in the business to create profit, to get profit. Therefore, it is not going to be as expensive for us as it would be in the private sector, because the private sector eventually always goes monopolistic, meaning that your prices are going to go up, and then the next thing you know, your services go down. But now they have control of the levers of government. And so guess what? They're going to try to keep all that for themselves, meaning that they don't want people to actually have these services, because that means that they won't want to have to pay for it, even though they're operating within that state. So you get what you pay for. And so that's one of the gripes that I have with what you said here. And so if I'm giving you a lot, even though you may be paying significantly, you're still getting a lot in exchange for that. The problem is that the government subsidies always go to the big corporations. The big corporations keep all the money at the top, and then the money at the top doesn't get circulated back to the rest of us. And so therefore, we see nothing from the investment that we give through our tax dollars going to the states. And so therefore, this is why some people get pissed off, because they're like, well, I don't want to pay these taxes because what am I really getting out of it? I'm not getting anything out of it. The problem is that the state is not actually doing its part and actually making sure that the people get the goods and services that they're supposed to be getting as a public good. And so therefore, they get pissed off and they think, well, I'm being cheated. This is why taxation is theft. And then they don't want to pay any more taxes because the government ain't giving them shit. When in reality, the problem is that you have corporations that take over state and federal governments and municipal governments, really, if we're being honest. And so then the people are constantly cheated, and the taxes that are taken out, we give the subsidies of these taxes to the big corporations instead of actually giving it back to the people in the form of goods and services. And so then people, if you actually gave them all the things that they were supposed to have, that we actually want, that we actually need as a public necessity, then we wouldn't be feeling that taxation and stuff. It would actually be an even exchange. Anyway, it says our people should be rewarded for hard work, not punished. And that's the thing. You are still being rewarded for hard work if the government actually gave you the goods and services that you are due as a citizen. But the problem is that it's about who controls the levers of government, not government itself. I hate when people go, government's the problem. The government's not the problem. It's just, that's like saying a gun kills people, it's the gun that kills people, not people kill people. No. The person who's wielding the tool, the person who's wielding the weapon will use it as they will it. And so therefore, the corporations are wielding government as they have it. So therefore, they're wielding it as a weapon against us. So this is why we got to wrestle it out of the hands of the corporations. He says, and that Mississippi has the potential to be a magnet for opportunity, for investment, for talent, and for families looking to build a better life. And the thing is like, you can, but not by cutting out goods and services. Anyway, says legislation last signed puts us in a rare class of elite competitive states. There are only a handful of states in the country that do not tax income. Today, Mississippi joins their ranks, and in doing so, we plant our flag. We're saying to job creators across America, if you want to build, come to Mississippi. We are saying to, when they say job creators, by the way, here's the thing that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Let me just say this. When they say job creators, they actually mean rich people. And rich people don't create jobs. Well, and then the money that should be circulated among the workers actually gets taken out of their neighborhoods. It gets taken out of our city. Hell, maybe even get taken out of our state. And it goes someplace else. So are they really job creators, or really are they just taking their wealth away? They're leeches on society. That's all I got to say. Okay. I'm blabbering on too much. But it says, we are saying to families across the South, if you want to grow, come to Mississippi. We're saying to entrepreneurs, to workers, to dreamers, Mississippi is open for business and we won't penalize your success. Again, court is supposed to be an even exchange. We're going to compete and we're going to win. Now, I want to be clear. Doesn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen alone. This day was a result of years of work by dedicated leaders who shared the vision and had the courage to act. I want to thank Speaker Jason White and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hoseman. Goodness. I want to give special thanks to Speaker White because he worked with his tail off to get this done. I also want to thank House Ways and Means Chairman Trey Labar and all the members of the House and Senate who rolled up their sleeves and got this done. We debated, we negotiated, and we stayed focused on the goal, and we got it across the finish line together. It says to the people of Mississippi, you are the real winners today. This law means more money in your pocket. It means more jobs in your town. It means a future with more opportunity for your children and grandchildren. The work of your hands belongs to you. It is yours to feed your family, to invest in your home and your community. Gosh, it's very individualistic. It says, because that's what it's ultimately about. Not just numbers on a balance sheet, but lives. Generations from now, when our kids are raising families of their own in a stronger, more prosperous Mississippi, they will look back on this moment and say, this is when we took our shot. This is when we bet on ourselves. This is when we really broke from the pack. This is when we took bold action, paid it up. My God, this guy is sniffing his own ass right now. I'm sorry. This guy is really smelling himself. Like, this man is acting like he just gave 5 loaves of bread and 3 fishes to feed 5,000 people. Like, what in the world? Hey, bro, you're acting like we just made a miracle. I can't read no more. I'm sorry. Let's get into the article. I spent enough of your time. Oh, Lord. Goodness gracious. All right, so let's get into this. So that's Governor Tate Reeves. Yeah, I know he looks like Peter Griffin. Anyway, it says Governor Tate Reeves signed a bill to overhaul Mississippi's tax system, one that many lawmakers inadvertently voted for because of typos into law on Thursday. So it says it has typos. Let's get into it. All righty. It says this sets Mississippi on a path to become the first state to eliminate existing income tax when the tax is phased out in about 14 years. This isn't instant. This isn't. Oh, sorry. This isn't instant. This is going to take 14 years to phase out. It says Reeves said the law marks a turning point in the state's history that would make Mississippi a magnet for corporate investment in workers from other states. Corporate investment, meaning corporate power. More corporate power over the politicians in that state. That sounds like the quiet part out loud. Let's continue. It says Reeves said the law. I'm sorry. Oh, I just read that part. I read what he said already. It says Mississippi is currently reducing its income tax rate to 4% from a previously passed tax cut being phased in. Beginning in 2027, the new law will reduce that rate by 0.25%, over 4 years until it reaches 3%. In 2031, the tax will only be reduced if certain revenue growth triggers are met. The law also reduces sales tax on groceries from 7% to 5%, raises the gas tax from 18.4 cents a gallon to 24.4 cents a gallon over 3 years to fund infrastructure and changes to contribution model of the public employee retirement system. So, hold up. Let me ask this. What good is lowering the tax on food, but you're raising the tax on gas? How are people actually making out better if you're still going to be paying that same money out, except for instead of it going to food, it's going to gas? How is that going to help? It's a bait and switch. Man, these guys. Says House leaders have long pushed to eliminate the state personal income tax in relatively short order. The state has urged long-term approach, arguing it will be unwise to slash third of the state's revenue in uncertain economic times. Senators last week had conceded to eliminate the income tax, but only with the economic growth triggers as safeguards. The tax wouldn't phase out unless the state saw robust economic growth and controlled spending. It would have likely taken many years, or so they thought. The Senate bill had typos that essentially nullified the growth triggers and would eliminate the income tax nearly as quickly as the House proposed. The House passed the flawed bill on to the governor, who signed it into law on Thursday. In a social media post last week, Reeves, who did not mention the bizarre series of events that helped send the bill to his desk, said liberal activists were making claims of errors, omissions, mistakes, and changes. Since then, both House Speaker Jason White and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, both Republicans, have acknowledged the legislation signed into law Thursday contained errors. It says Reeves said that the tax overhaul will lead to economic dynamism and attract new residents to Mississippi, but local officials and experts remain divided on whether eliminating the tax will actually benefit the state's economy and whether citizens will reap any of the benefits that politicians claim they will. So is Neva Buckus, a senior analyst with the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy, said her projections show that once Mississippi abolishes its income tax, it will likely result in a $2.6 billion reduction to the current $7 billion general fund budget, revenue that the poorest state in the nation could use to provide core government services. So this is what she says. What the state is essentially committing to is a very extreme and dramatic loss of revenue during a very tumultuous time during which the state might be reckoning with large federal cuts to social programs that many Mississippians rely on. And they are doing all this while creating a windfall for the state's wealthiest residents in the poorest state of the union. So let's get into this, because here's the problem. Professor Richard Wolff has said that the United States typically goes through an economic recession every 4 to 7 years. The last economic recession that we had was during 2020 during the pandemic. It is now 2025. So we are well within the 4 to 7 year range. We are in 2025, 5 years. That being said, there is a looming recession upon us. The inflation is out of control. And so now you're cutting government services that are essential for the survival of the people of Mississippi, while the government while we have inflation growing, and you have Elon Musk and his merry band of flying monkeys that are trying to cut more government services on the federal level. And so who's going to hurt most? It's going to be all of us. And let me just see something here. Okay, so you're doing this to a state that has a third of the population is Black American, is Black. 35% of people from Mississippi are Black. 35. And so who's this going to hurt most? It's going to be the poor white people in Mississippi and a lot of Black people in Mississippi. That's who is going to hurt the most. But do they care? Of course they don't. And she ends by saying it creating a windfall for the state's wealthiest residents in the poorest state of the union. Of course. Because payroll tax, income tax, it's not going to be paid out. So if you have wealthy people, there's no tax being placed on them. It's just sad all around. In order to backstop, because my thing is like, if you're going to cut the state income tax, then you have to create a backstop. You have to create something that replaces that tax that's being cut in order to keep the revenue coming into the state. Unless you start cutting state programs, but you start cutting state programs, that's going to make things worse for residents. So you have to fill in that gap. Well, then, what's going to happen? Remember, talk about that gas tax? Is that the only tax that's going to come up? What about fees and services, government services that we have to pay for? That tag you need to get renewed, that price may go up. That license you may need to get renewed, that license may go up. The services that you need from your state might go up. Your services that you may get food stamps from may go down. Or they may not pay as much, and it comes to housing assistance. They may not help you as much. Says Mississippi's decision to eliminate tax without raising another tax to offset the general fund loss comes as President Donald Trump's administration and the GOP-controlled Congress are considering sweeping budget cuts and freezing federal grants that may fund many services. Mississippi's economy and budget are among the most reliant on federal spending in the nation. If the federal government significantly slashes any federal programs, the impact will most certainly trickle down to the state level. The ITEP's data showed that Mississippians who make less than $19,300 a year, the poorest of the poor, already spend about 12.4% of their income on taxes. In comparison, Mississippians who make over $362,000 annually only contribute 6.9% of their income taxes. When we say it is more expensive to be poor, we mean it. It is more expensive. We're carrying the rich instead of the rich carrying us. That's the problem. So I'm not going to be able to read this entire article, but I just want to get into some of this. It says, but it's in such a place as Greenville, located in a rural, poverty-stricken Mississippi Delta, some worry a / general fund alongside a gas tax increase could make it more expensive to drive and weaken local government's ability to provide basic services. It says trickle-down negative effects on this tax overhaul will not actually trickle down. It will be a huge takeaway from this rural community. When local governments lose the ability to fund police, fire, and other essential services, the safety and well-being of our residents are put at risk. It says in Greenwood, located at the eastern edge of the Delta, Mayor Carolyn McAdams says she was concerned that the law's increased grocery sales tax diversion might not be enough to make up for revenue small towns might lose. Now, this is from Ida Benna. I'm sorry, this is from McAdams. She said the people in small towns like Ida Benna, Sidon, Shatler, and only have these convenience stores, and they don't even have grocery stores. What is that going to do to these small towns? I have to trust they're going to take all of that into consideration and not do anything that would be harmful to the cities and towns that make Mississippi. So here's the issue. This is also going to affect a lot of people in rural areas, in rural towns, and small towns across this country in places like Mississippi. And so this is one of the biggest issues, is that there's no concern for the people who are workers. There's no concern for the people who are the most marginalized. Even if you're poor and white, there's no concern for you. They don't care. And so this is one of the reasons why this is going to be a very negative impact on just regular average people like you and me. Now, I want to share this as well. Yes, Mississippi is literally one of the poorest states in the nation. Let's go to the Out of Reach program from National Low Income Housing Coalition. So Out of Reach, let's share how much you need to make it in order for a 2-bedroom apartment in Mississippi. In Mississippi, it is the 45th state, most expensive state in the United States out of 51 that they're counting, because the 51 is, I think, DC, because they count that as a separate area. But you need to make $20.03 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the state of Mississippi. Okay. So I'm sorry, that's Alabama. Mississippi, $20.03 an hour. Right. So with that being said, let's go to this. It goes into the breakdown of minimum wage. And let me make sure I'll share it. Let me see, accept all. Let me get to Mississippi. Oh my goodness. All right, and let me share the screen. Well, that's old. Wait. Just swore I had the updated one. Sorry, guys. Bookmarks. I swore I had it. Is this the updated one? I think I had the old one. I think I had 2023's. They updated it last year, 2024. No, that's the same one. I was going to show you guys the breakdown in the different cities, but I don't think I have. I will have to look for it, and it's going to take me too long to look for it. Um, I don't think, is this it? No. All right, so I was going to try to do the breakdown. I'm sorry, but yeah, $20.03 an hour, and I also wanted to share this as well about different facts about Mississippi, and this is going to be from the Urban Institute. Whole thing. All right, so make sure this is, yeah, that's big enough. All right, so this is Mississippi. Okay, so Mississippi enacted its fiscal year 2025 budget in May 2024. The budget reported $7 billion in general fund spending, a 5% increase over the previously enacted budget. Mississippi did not reduce taxes in the calendar year of 2023, but lawmakers approved a large individual income tax cut in 2022. Under the American Rescue Plan, Mississippi receives $1.8 billion in direct state fiscal aid and $679 million in local government aid from the federal government. As of January 2025, Mississippi had fully allocated its state ARP. States must spend the funds by December 31st, 2026. According to the National Association of State Budget Officers, NASBO, Mississippi's total expenditures for fiscal year were $23.7 billion, including general funds, other than state funds, bonds, and federal funds. NASBO reported that total expenditures across the state in fiscal year 2024 were $2.9 trillion, ranging from the $5.4 billion in Wyoming to $413.8 billion in California. According to NASBO, Mississippi's recent expenditure totals, general fund spending total, including federal transfers, were, and of course, it's around the $6 billion mark between 5.5 in 2019 to now it's 6.7 billion. So this just shows Mississippi, but I want to get to the economic per capita expenditures. This was from 2021. If you look at it, it says compare with national average and regional averages. So this is considered to be in the Southeast, central Southeast, and how much they spend on different things as compared to Mississippi, the Southeast, the United States, and the United States in general. If you look at public welfare, Mississippi actually spends just shy of between the rest of the states in the Southeast, as well as the entirety of the United States. Of course, they spend less per capita federally. Mississippi actually spends more in health and hospitals per capita, right? But they don't have a universal healthcare system. They're spending more also on higher education, right? Highways and roads are spent just about almost equal. And then police is actually spent less than the federal government per capita, corrections, and also housing. And so that's per capita expenditures in fiscal year 2021. And so this is the revenue that they take in. And so this is just shows that, you know, for instance, Mississippi's unemployment rate as well. Because if you're not employed, you can't pay a state income tax, by the way. But it reached its peak just over 15% in 2020, and the employment rate did drop precipitously after 2020. And so, it follows the same trend as the United States. And of course, the top 5 industries are government, finance, manufacturing, retail, and social services. Um, Look at this. Important Mississippi industries. Besides state and local government, the second biggest one, which is private sector, is retail. And when people talk about, oh, we need to bring manufacturing back, y'all ain't doing it though, because the corporations need that cheap labor. Anyways, let me go into. So, of course, there's a Republican-controlled state. And then, of course, when it comes to Mississippi, Mississippi has about 35% Black. It's about 55% white. So this is a lot of great demographics. Let me put the link to this also in the chat so you guys can see the demographics when it comes to the state of Mississippi. But ultimately, what's going to happen is that a lot of people are going to suffer when it comes to the state taxes and when it comes to state services for people. So it's not going to be good for them. And plus, Mississippi being the poorest state in the United States, and then on top of it, you have cities like Jackson that don't have clean water, and Jackson's a predominantly Black town in Mississippi. You're going to see a whole lot out of Mississippi, I'm telling you. And in that same vein, just as an aside, we're about to suffer even more here in Florida. Because if you look at Mississippi's trying to get rid of their income tax. Florida doesn't have an income tax. We got rid of our income tax years ago. But is Florida doing that much better? And here's the problem. Yeah, Mississippi has a relatively low cost of living, but also they don't pay that much there. They don't have an income tax, and they're trying to get corporations to come there. That's all fine and well and good, but then you're going to attract them, and then you're going to pull in more people from northern states also to Mississippi, which means that your populations will go up, right? But you know what else is going to go up? It's also the cost of living is going to go up. In order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the state of Florida, because we don't have a state income tax. So the corporations love being here, right? Walt Disney World is here. Universal Orlando is here. SpaceX is here. So of course they don't have to pay state income tax. And so that is not going to be good for the larger portion of those of us who are just regular working class folks. And Florida is trying to do something even more further, which it's big. Let me share this. Governor DeSantis proposes eliminating property taxes in Florida. So I'm not really going to get into too much into this article because we're talking mainly about Mississippi. But it talks about how it says at a news conference in Orlando on Monday, the governor mentioned a proposal in the Florida House to provide $5 billion per year in sales tax cuts. And then DeSantis says he wants legislators instead to focus the relief on property taxes for homeowners who live in the state. Says DeSantis says cutting property taxes will result in nearly 1,000 tax break for homeowners. Now, here's my issue. While tax breaks for homeowners is in itself good, right? Especially for homeowners who are, not doing too hot when it comes to economically. This is really for the rich people who own homes, and this is for the landlords. Is this really going to offset the amount of money that we pay in rent? Because if you have a landlord, they have to pay property taxes on that property, but they're no longer paying property taxes on it. Are they going to lower their rents? They're not. You and I both know they're not going to lower their rents. They're going to keep their rents the same level, but they're just going to be making more profit. And this is not just to the mom and pop landlords. This is also going to be for the corporate landlords too that operate in the state. This is going to be a boom to them. It's not really for the average people like you and me. Silly goose. No. This is going to be for the big property owners. Now, you know what else gets funded by property taxes? Education. Schools get funded by property tax. So if you eliminate the property tax, then how are the schools going to be funded? Now, I personally think that we should shift it from being funded by property tax to just having the state fund it and make sure it's based on a per capita. Let's say if we want to spend $4,000 per student per capita, make sure it's even across the board. All right. So here in Orlando, you're going to spend the same amount per student per capita in Rocket Lake Elementary as you're going to spend per student at an elementary school in Dr. Phillips. You're going to spend the same amount of student per capita as you do in Jones High School versus you do in Dr. Phillips High School. But are they going to do that? Is the State Board of Education going to start funding schools across the board per capita and make it even among all the students so they all have equal and equitable ability to be able to have education? Because if we're getting rid of property taxes, then that's the only way they're going to be able to really have any type of revenue for the schools, unless they're trying to make it so that all students go to a charter school, which is privatizing public education. And once you privatize something, you know what happens, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the biggest issues here in Florida is now they're trying to get rid of property taxes in total. So you have Mississippi trying to get rid of their state income taxes, which is a boom for the big corporations. Then on top of that, you have Florida trying to get rid of property taxes, which is a big boom to the corporations. Any wonder why people are sick and tired of being sick and tired? Look, y'all, I'm just saying. And with that, one of the things that I want to do is there was some notes by Roger Meadows that I want to read because he has some things to say. And I think I pretty much largely agree. Hang on, let me make sure. Oh. Let me see. Hang on. want to go back to this. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I found it. Let me see. All right. So, all right. I found it. Oh, okay. I found it. Okay. All right. So I hope you don't mind me sharing my screen, Roger, but I want to read this really quick because this is also a really good point, and I'll get into this. Should actually, how do I expand this? No, do it that way. He says no state income tax means local government can no longer depend on the state government for help, which means local tax like property sales, tickets, fees, fines, penalties, taxes go up. Transportation taxes like tolls, take trains and buses go up. This means the social safety net services will be cut. Corporations can come in and take over and run government and never be held accountable. More governors begging for dependency on the federal government for money. Oop. Says, which means the more they have control over you, what happens when a Democratic president decides to be malicious and say, oh, you don't want to get down with the get down? Okay, look what I can do to your state. Says James, seeing the cutting of social safety net programs and services is not something the right cares about. Couple that with big business coming in to bring jobs to the state. On the surface looks good, but cannot see the nuance of no worker protections and running roughshod over the local community, putting their community health and environment at risk without a democratic process. I think the best argument from a leftist perspective against this is to speak not in our socialist language, but in their language, the anti-federal government language, which is, do you want to have the hand over control of how we run things here in this state to the federal government? Because if we cannot generate our own revenue, that means more begging money from the federal government. And what if we have a federal government that is hostile to our interest in the state? They control us. So this is what you're doing by handing over the control, because now that all you're going to have is a governor after governor after governor begging the federal government, begging the president for money. And if the president wants something from the governor that might go against the interests of the public in the state, then we're screwed. This is another point I meant to share. Sorry. It says that's when you bring in an open the door to the introduction of why it's better to have a state public bank to offset and raise the revenue needed to finance what we need financing for. That's the argument against eliminating state taxes. Now the remedy for, but what about bringing jobs and corporations to the state? How do we attract them to come here? What you do instead of is tax subsidy for people to start their own homegrown cooperative businesses here in this state instead of having to attract from the outside. We can start it and build it and originate it here in the state of Mississippi. So this is also a really good point, is that when it comes to attracting businesses, you're trying to get big corporations to come to the state. It's like, why don't we just grow our own, homegrown businesses to create that? If you build it, they will come, right? If you build up businesses like worker cooperatives within the state, people are going to move down. But you're trying to get big corporations to come in. And it's kind of like building a house on the rocks versus building a house on the sand. It's not stable on the sand. And by the corporations, you're building a house on the sand versus instead of building it on steady rock, which is depending on the people who actually live in that state and work in that state. Right? Let me go further. Hang on, let me stop sharing really sick because let me see what else Roger says. Oh, let me read this too, because this is also a really good point too I wanted to share. And this is great insight on Roger's part. See, the thing is that this thing doesn't instantly share anymore. That's the problem. All right. It says, oh my God, I just realized with no revenue coming into the finance infrastructure, building of new, upgrade, maintenance, and upkeep of old means, oh well, privatize it. Water, sewage, waste management, sanitation, power grid, broadband, transportation, and housing. This is how they will privatize our infrastructure. And this is the point that I wanted to bring out, is that they are going to try to privatize everything. Everything private. And once it's privatized, that means that it's tied to profit. If it's tied to profit, somebody's going to die. If profit is tied to something that is essential for human life, somebody is going to die because there's somebody that's not going to be able to afford it. If you put a paywall on essential necessities that people need to live, somebody dies. That's the problem with the system. And you can say all day, oh, well, I don't want to work hard. And then somebody else just sits lazy and they don't do anything. You mean like billionaires? Billionaires sit on their behinds, lazy all day, just collecting dividend checks, and then they hoard it away. And then guess what? There's less money circulating through the system, which means there's less for us. And then it creates an artificial scarcity, meaning that we're all fighting each other for the crumbs while they got the big old stocks of bread in their closet. Break the door down. Grab the bread, baby. Grab it. Grab the sourdough, the Italian, the challah. Get those tortillas. Grab all the bread, because guess what? That's the bread that they stole from you. Right? The biggest source of theft in the United States is wage theft, meaning the corporations, the billionaires, the owner class. That's who's stealing from you. And you guys are like, taxation is theft. Wage theft is theft. What in the world? Lock in, baby. Wage theft. They're stealing your surplus value. You do something to make $10 an hour, you made $100 in revenue from them. That means they take 90, you only take 10. And what do? They sit in their boardrooms, twiddling their thumbs, snorting some of that twinkle twinkle on your dime. This is why I talk about coming together to get rid of the system, because it does not work for you or I. And people are just going, well, we just don't want government to run services. Why not? Why in the world would you leave it to corporations to run the very thing that runs our lives, that oversees our lives, that owns the police, that owns the fire department? Why would you want to have corporations having their say, complete say over these essential services? For them to cut them away so that whenever you actually need something, they go, you got to pay me first. You got to pay me first. Hey, I want my money. What? That's why I say government is like a hammer. It can be used as a tool to build or used as a tool to destroy. Who do you want to have the levers of government? Do you want the Peter Thiels and Elon Musks and Harlan Crows to own our government, because that's exactly what they do. You're in this situation because of these guys. And these guys are just the neo versions of the Carnegies. They're the neo versions of the Rockefellers. They're the new versions. This is the problem. They got you hating the gun instead of the shooter. Lock in. Don't be mad at the axe for being used as a tool to kill somebody. Get mad at the axe murderer. Is the axe going to sit on the bench on trial for the murder of somebody? Or is it the person who wielded the axe sitting on the bench for the murder? Why are you putting the axe on trial when you should be putting the axe murderer on trial, the person who actually wielded the axe? I'm just saying. Lock in. That's the issue, man. Anywho. Oh my goodness. Roger, what'd you do to me? Roger says public banks at state, regional, and municipal level now. Absolutely. And that's exactly what we should have. At the very least. And here's the funny thing. Let me just wrap with you guys for a second on this. Because here's something a lot of people don't realize. In China, when you buy a house, you pay your property tax one time. You don't pay it year over year. You pay property tax one time. And then you don't pay property tax on that home anymore. But you know what China has? There are 5 of the world's top banks. 4 of them are state-owned Chinese banks. The 5th is an American bank. So they're creating revenue without having to raise your taxes on the homeowners. But then they don't have to pass that tax burden onto the people who don't own homes. So that's what they're doing. So they're looking out for the homeowners, right? By the way, by homeowners, I mean homeowners, the people that actually live in the homes that they own. I'm not talking about the property owners. I'm not talking about the landlords. No, because they're very strict with their landlords in China. I love that about China. I just love it. But also, they have public banks in order to create revenue in the market, so then that revenue goes for their infrastructure. This is why they're damn near building ready-made cities that are completely empty, that they're just like, all right, we got it ready for people to fill in. Because they built the infrastructure in preparation for people. This is why you have a central planning model. So that cities are already made. The buildings are already there. The kitchens are there. The living rooms are there. The laundromats are there. Right? The bedrooms are there. The bathrooms are there. They're there. Ready, waiting. And it's like, oh, you're homeless? All right, we'll give you someplace to live. And just, when you get a job, then you can start paying rent, and we'll do it just according to your income. We'll do it to the cost of living. It's fine. But that's China. This is why their cost of living is wonderful compared to ours. Wonderful. Is it perfect? No, but it's a lot better than what we have. Way better. And so when it comes to that, we could imitate what they're doing, but no, that's a bridge too far, because that means that the poors are actually going to have things like healthcare, housing, education, food, and clean water. Oh, parents thought that poors actually have what's necessary to live. Roger, I love you. but you sending me this stuff is like pouring gasoline on a lit match because I just go off. Anywho, I know there's more, Roger. I just wanted to share that. I think that's it. Oh, he says, rolling back to the Mississippi story, what I said about the best arguments that we can have for the right wing is, do you really want to give control of your state government and the federal government because you cannot generate your own revenue to pay for what you need? Where if a opposite party president was in office, your government will have to do something that goes against your interest in order to get whatever the money and resources needed for disaster emergencies or whatever. The second argument will be this: we'll end up having to relinquish control over our infrastructure to private equity, who will raise rates to make money for their shareholders while at the same time delivering crappy service like internet ISPs. Remember, James, we're not going to be able to sway them with the socialist argument of you're going to hurt poor people by cutting social safety net issues, when they think that you're just a bunch of lazy sons of bees that want to depend on the government and not work your lazy ass and get off your lazy ass and work. All right, so now I'm going to go down to his further thoughts. And I see you, Joey. I'm gonna get to that too, because that's also a really good point. I see your brother Joey. All right. Also, if you could talk about on your show that Mississippi has done, the dangers that come from getting rid of a state income tax, and how this is the first step into privatization of infrastructure such as waste management, sewage, H2O, power, broadband, and transportation. Imagine having an easy pass, or you guys in the South call it easy tag, going off every road, street, place you drive on. What's worse, not just the privatization of these things, but the monopolization of these things, where you get charged up the wazoo, but the upkeep and maintenance, upgrading, repair falls by the wayside, and the service is crappy. This serves as a warning that will also increase other state taxes, as well as increase local taxes, fines, fees, penalties, and tickets. Not to mention the fact that making themselves more dependent on the federal government, which means they have control over you because you can't come up with your own money. And then talked about the enumerated powers, which really, let me go. Okay. Okay. I'm getting there, Raj. All right. So let me share this. I hate that I have to do this extra step. Oh, come on. It says, going back to Florida for a second, what's funny is that it's already hard because it still requires 60% to ratify the amendment and 66% if it's created new taxes or increased existing taxes. Now, here's the thing. Any change on the citizen ballot initiative process requires a state constitutional amendment, which means they're going to have to put this change on the ballot, put this change to the process on the ballot. I have a feeling it won't pass because 60% is needed. Now they will probably put it on a special election ballot, a ballot that happens in an odd number year like this year, or both. I have a ballot measure that calls for any time the government wishes to change the process, they must put it on the presidential November election ballot so they don't try to sneak it past in a low turnout election. I agree with that. He said, even though it was Reeves' predecessor who did this for Brett Favre to take the PPP money, PPP loans, to use to build the volleyball stadium for his daughter. Yet look at who the Reeves let that continue to facilitate. The government plays a sleight of hand with taxes. I'm not cutting taxes you pay. I'm transferring something else you will have to pay. I just said that. You'll have more money in your paycheck, not for you, but to spend on us another way. They're setting up Mississippi is for the Black Rock to take over. Oh, yes, absolutely, Roger. This is exactly what's going on. He said, do you know that Mississippi used to be a citizen ballot initiative state for amendments? What happened was that they lost the ability because in 1992, an amendment was passed for a distribution requirement that says you have to get signatures from all 5 congressional districts. However, in 2000, they lost a congressional district and they kept passing amendments. Then somebody challenged one of the amendments a few years ago. They said it says it has to be all 5 congressional districts, but it ain't our fault that we lost a congressional district because of population loss. The judge agreed and invalidated the ability for voters to place their own amendments on the ballot and told the Mississippi legislature that they are going to have to put on a new legislative amendment on the ballot for voters to ratify into the Mississippi Constitution that would correct the issue. That was a decision made a few years ago. Mississippi legislature has yet to do it. Okay, and then I will share this because I don't have time right now, but I will share this into the chat. All right. So thank you very much for that, Roger. So ultimately, with that being said, yeah, it's a bad idea to get rid of the state income tax without actually creating infrastructure that would actually end up helping the people, the working people of the state. Instead, you're just doing a bait and switch and you're just making it better for the corporations and the very rich, but you're not actually making it better for the working people. People in Mississippi, keep your head on a swivel and start organizing because these guys don't care about you. And we're pulling for you. All right, go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it very much. Let's get into the chat. All righty, I'm going to check to see if I have any. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.